How often have you reached the end of the development cycle only to realize that the product missed the mark? Your team put on the work, the design is complete, testing is wrapping up, everything looks on track, and then it happens. It becomes clear that it won't work. Maybe it's too heavy. Maybe it costs too much. Maybe it doesn't actually solve the problem it was intended to. Just like that, you're not moving forward anymore. You're going backwards, reworking, redesigning, rethinking decisions that should have been clear from the start. So what happened? It's easy to point to design choices or technical decisions, but more often than not, the real issue started much earlier. The target was never clearly defined. Because requirements are more than just a list, they define what success looks like. They capture customer intent. They set boundaries. They give teams a shared understanding of what they're trying to achieve. Without that clarity, even the best teams can head in the wrong direction. And here's the catch. A lot of teams believe they can figure it out as they go along, but without a strong foundation up front, this inevitably leads to rework, momentum turns into frustration, and progress turns into cycles. Requirements don't have to be perfect, but they have to be purposeful. They're the roadmap that keeps teams aligned and moving toward the right outcome. So if you ever felt like your team did everything right and still ended up off target, this is where you need to look. In this video, we'll break down how to define requirements that drive better products and better results. Without clarity, even strong teams can head in the wrong direction, only realize it too late. And that's what we're going to focus on today, how to define requirements in a way that leads to better products. I'm Heinrich Bartels of productcost.com. We focus on helping companies identify cost reduction opportunities and how to build that capability over time with practical tools and insights that they can apply directly. This is also a two-way conversation. We'd like to understand what's working for you and how your teams approach cost reduction. For that reason, please provide us with your thoughts regarding how you tackle cost reduction in your organization in the comments section below. If you want to go deeper, we provide a resource called The Practical Guide to Product Cost Reduction at productcost.com/reduce. Now, I've seen both sides of this. I've worked on projects where teams winged the requirements and inevitably something critical was missed. Sometimes it's weight, where the product exceeds limits and becomes unusable, or cost, where it no longer meets market expectations. But I've also worked with teams where requirements were defined up front, and those teams actually preferred it because they knew what defined success. Across vehicles, pumps, and drilling equipment, the result was always the same: better alignment, fewer surprises, and stronger outcomes. So let's start with the first concept, quantify the need. Quantifying the need for a customer is one of the most important steps when setting up requirements. You want to understand what a customer is really trying to do. You want to understand what job does this product going to perform and whether that aligns with your business strategy and objectives. Looking at your business strategy and objectives, it's very easy to align yourself to one customer. But what happens very often is that when you do that, then you're only going to be selling to that one customer because they're going to be putting in requirements that don't fit with other customers. So you want to be careful not to get into an area where you funnel all your requirements towards one customer, because then you're locking yourself into that customer. You want to look at the broader market and understand what the requirements are for the broader market, because your business objectives are more than likely going to be looking at volume and not trying to tie yourself to one particular customer. So be careful about that. Poll multiple customers rather than a single customer. You can set up your initial requirements and needs with one customer and then start looking more broadly, getting feedback from your field service personnel, feedback from the salespeople, and understanding what feedback they're getting from the customer and put that together into a broader package. Also understand what environment the product is being used in. Consider the operating conditions and constraints include for maintenance, weight limits, accessibility. Determine what the value driving characteristics of this product are. What truly matters to your customer? What are the things that they're willing to pay for? Is it cost? Is it weight? Is it performance? Prioritize the key drivers, whether it be features, performance, maintainability, cycle time, and then look at each one of them as you collect all of these together. Understand which ones are more meaningful to customers and prioritize those into your requirements. You don't want to be picking features that are not meaningful to your business. Your ultimate goal is to set up requirements that are going to give you the best product and the most competitive product. And that way you have something that's not a me too, but a best of class type product. The only way you're going to do that is set up your requirements such that you are competitive, and make sure you include the important features that are going to set you apart from your competitors. Some requirements are going to cost a little bit more, but if those are the ones that are going to differentiate you from your competitors, you may want to consider putting those in. Once you have these together, you want to decompose this into your key functions and requirements. Ensure that you have full coverage of your proposed product. Be careful to make each one of these requirements measurable. Convert them into quantified requirements. Define clear targets for each. If they're not measurable, it'll be very difficult to guide the decisions of the development team. When creating requirements, it's a common occurrence that a particular design solution is baked into the requirements or written into the requirements. What this does, it locks in how you prescribe how to achieve the requirements rather than defining what needs to be achieved. By attaching yourself to preferred concept or design solution, you're locking up a potentially non-optimal solution way too early in the game. You're also eliminating better options before they're even explored or considered. You want to try to open up your design space and keep it open as long as you can, so that way you're defining boundaries such as cost, weight, performance. You may put in maintenance strategies, but these are broad. These don't lock you into a particular solution path. You want to allow multiple solutions within those limits and keep it as open as possible. The best solutions are often found in areas of the design envelope that you didn't even consider when the requirements were created. You want to enable exploration and comparison of alternatives. The team is then allowed to explore a design space and use trade-off studies and design of experiments, which gives them the opportunity to look at various designs across the whole design space, compare them, look at them analytically, look at them objectively, and decide which ones best meet the requirement set rather than locking into one particular solution within the design space before you've even looked at all the others. Sometimes you have to put in some tighter constraints around certain requirements, and this is usually based on the needs of the customer or the industry or a particular regulation, and then you just have to go ahead and make those tighter. But for the most part, try to keep them as open as possible. A wider solution window increases the chances of producing innovative solutions. When looking at your set of requirements, there's certain requirements that are system requirements that affect the overall system. And within that set of system requirements, there are requirements that are referred to as being natural candidates to being selected as targets. Targets are key measures such as maximum weight, cost, and other performance thresholds. These are business critical parameters that are important to that particular product or that particular system. Cost and schedule are two that can be used, and they directly impact your business case. If any changes are made to cost and schedule, this will require a change to the business case, and also requires you to speak to business leadership before you can make that change, because you may need to change the resources allocated to that project. These aren't flexible design details, they are rather core success drivers. Ideally, targets should align themselves with business objectives. Targets also align the engineering team with commercial success. They ensure that design decisions reflect market viability. It mitigates against the likelihood of developing technically good solutions that fail commercially. You want to enable early trade-off decisions that force prioritization and reduce the probability of late-stage redesigns or compromises. When selecting a target, you want to select no more than about one or two. If you have too many, it becomes burdensome to the team, and therefore it's counterproductive to select too many. I wouldn't select more than 3 or 4, but I would try to focus on selecting one if at all possible. This keeps the team focused on that one particular target and keeps everyone engaged in meeting that particular target. You want to monitor the target throughout the development cycle and regularly share these with the leadership and stakeholders that are involved in that project. This gives them insight into what's happening in the project, how you're developing, which decisions are being made to keep the project on track, and whether there is some management of the key parameters and seeing where those are going and what is driving each particular decision. If there's any drift, it doesn't become irreversible. It gets caught early, and you can redirect the project and the decisions within the project to keep it on track. These are effectively a management tool that keep development projects on track. Assembling requirements is only the very first step in the process of defining a requirement set. The initial versions are starting points and not necessarily final answers. The requirements need to be refined during discussion and a feedback cycle. You do this by leveraging a multifunctional collaboration involving engineering, manufacturing, quality, sales, business leadership, field service, procurement, all the functions that are necessary to expose the different risks, gaps, and constraints. This increases the robustness of your requirements. The cross-review helps identify missing or unrealistic requirements, strengthens the clarity, completeness, and feasibility of each one of those requirements. Now, these discussions can be very intense, and I've been taken aback during these discussions as to how much emotion is involved in these discussions. But what that implies is that these requirements are important to each one of the members in the discussion. It's not a bad thing, it's good. It's necessary to balance viewpoints. Tension helps robustness and improves buy-in. You want to have the tension. Don't shy away from tension. Encourage the tension, because that emotion means that the individual thinks that this is important, and that's what you really want during these discussions. Without the refining process, individual requirements tend to be immature. The sharpening process builds a robust requirement set that is less likely to change at a later date, since more factors are exposed during discussions. This builds organizational alignment and creates ownership across teams. It provides better buy-in and also reduces resistance once you get to the development process, and improves executional efficiency since you have a requirement set that is robust and stable. Great products don't start with solutions. They start with the right problem. What is the customer actually trying to accomplish? What job must the product perform? And how does that align with your business strategy? Without that alignment, even the best technical execution can miss the mark. From there, we ground requirements in the real world, how the product is used, the environment it operates in, the constraints it must work within. These factors define what success really looks like. We then focus on what truly drives value, what the customer is willing to pay for, and define those as outcomes, not solutions. Because the moment we prescribe the how, we begin to limit what's possible. Strong requirements are built through cross-functional collaboration. Each function brings a different perspective. The discussions may be intense, but that tension strengthens the result, exposing gaps, challenging assumptions, and building alignment. We also avoid over-specification instead of locking into solution too early. We define a design envelope, clear boundaries for cost, performance, and constraints, while keeping the solution space open. That openness creates opportunity. It allows teams to explore, run trade-offs, and discover better solutions, often in areas not initially considered. Finally, we make requirements measurable and anchor them with a target. This is a critical driver that connects engineering decisions directly to business success. When done right, requirements align teams, reduce risk, and enable better decisions. They turn effort into outcomes and ultimately into competitive advantage.